At the dawn of the 20th century, the RMS Titanic stood as a towering symbol of human engineering prowess and technological advancement. Heralded as the largest and most luxurious ocean liner of its time, the Titanic was marketed relentlessly as unsinkable, a claim that captured the imagination of the public and the press alike. This myth of invincibility was not merely a marketing slogan, but became a deeply ingrained belief that shaped public perception and confidence in the ship's safety. The media played an instrumental role in crafting this narrative. Newspapers and advertisements echoed the Titanic's supposed imperviousness to disaster, reinforcing a collective trust that the ship could weather any storm. Passengers boarded with an unshakable faith in the vessel's capabilities, a faith that tragically contributed to complacency regarding safety precautions. Behind the veneer of confidence, however, lay critical weaknesses in maritime safety standards. Early 20th century regulations were shockingly insufficient. The Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats, enough for just over half of the passengers and crew, far below what would be considered safe by modern standards. This shortfall was justified by outdated maritime laws and a misguided belief in the ship's unsinkability. Moreover, the crew was inadequately trained for emergency evacuation, and communication protocols were flawed, compounding the disaster's tragic outcome. The night of April 14th, 1912, when the Titanic struck an iceberg, shattered the illusion of invincibility. The ensuing chaos revealed not only the physical vulnerabilities of the ship, but also the fatal consequences of overconfidence fueled by marketing and media hype. The tragedy exposed glaring deficiencies in safety regulations and emergency preparedness, prompting a worldwide reassessment of maritime laws. This chapter examines the early 20th century maritime safety standards and their glaring shortcomings, illustrating how regulatory complacency and technological hubris intersected disastrously. It also delves into the media's powerful role in perpetuating the myth of the Titanic, demonstrating how marketing shaped public expectations and influenced behaviors that ultimately contributed to the scale of the catastrophe. In the wake of the disaster, the Titanic's legacy became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that no vessel, regardless of its grandeur, is immune to nature's forces. The myth of the unsinkable Titanic serves as a poignant example of how belief, when divorced from reality and rigorous safety measures, can have devastating consequences. The night the Titanic plunged into the icy Atlantic was not only a catastrophe of physical survival, but also a profound psychological ordeal that scarred its survivors for life. As the grand ship sank beneath the waves, those who lived through the harrowing ordeal emerged into a world forever altered, not just by the tragedy itself, but by the invisible wounds it left behind. Survivors recounted moments of unimaginable terror, the deafening roar of the hull breaking apart, the desperate scramble for lifeboats, the bitter coldness of the ocean, and the haunting cries of those left behind. Many described feeling paralyzed by fear, overwhelmed by the scale of loss, and haunted by memories that replayed incessantly in their minds. These experiences were often followed by profound feelings of guilt, helplessness, and survivor's remorse, emotions that would fester long after the disaster. Psychologists today recognize these reactions as symptoms akin to what we now identify as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, though at the time, such understanding was in its infancy. The term PTSD itself would not be coined until decades later. Yet the Titanic survivors' narratives offer early, poignant examples of trauma responses, nightmares, flashbacks, anxiety, and emotional numbing that mirror those found in modern trauma studies. To illustrate, Consider the testimony of Elizabeth Schutz, a third-class passenger who survived against overwhelming odds. She recalled how the screams of drowning souls echoed in her mind for years, disrupting her sleep and clouding her days with despair. In contrast, Harold Bride, one of the ship's wireless operators, spoke of the burden of guilt for having survived when so many others did not, a torment that shadowed him throughout his life. These personal accounts highlight the diverse ways trauma can manifest. Some survivors were able to return to their lives and families, carrying their pain silently, while others found their lives irreversibly shattered. The psychological aftermath was often compounded by societal expectations that survivors should simply be grateful to be alive, leaving many to suffer in silence. When compared to other maritime disasters, the Titanic survivors exhibited trauma responses that reflected both the unique circumstances of the sinking and the broader human reaction to catastrophic loss. For instance, survivors of the Lusitania's sinking and later shipwrecks shared similar symptoms, but the Titanic's scale and the mythic status of the ship intensified the psychological impact. This chapter will also explore how the emergence of PTSD as a recognized condition in the 20th century cast new light on the psychological wounds borne by Titanic survivors. It was only through advancements in mental health awareness and treatment that the profound human cost of such disasters began to be fully acknowledged. The stories of Titanic survivors remind us that while the ship itself was lost to the depths, the echoes of its sinking reverberated deeply within the hearts and minds of those who lived through it. Their trauma, often unspeakable and unseen, is an enduring testament to the human spirit's vulnerability in the face of overwhelming disaster. En dialogue, in a rare meeting years after the tragedy, two survivors, Margaret Brown and Charles Lightoller, reflected on their experiences. Margaret, every night, the sounds of that night return, the cracking ice, the frantic calls. It never truly leaves you. Charles, I often wonder if we were cursed to carry this burden. The world sees us as lucky, but the weight we bear is immense. Margaret, they expect us to move on, to forget. But forgetting feels like betraying those who didn't make it. Charles, perhaps sharing our stories is the only way to honor them, to make sense of the nightmare. Their conversation reveals the complexity of survivors' guilt and the struggle to reconcile survival with loss, underscoring the invisible scars left by the Titanic disaster. In the years following the Titanic disaster, a curious and often overlooked dimension of the survivors' experiences emerged. Accounts of ghostly sightings and supernatural encounters that seem to transcend the boundaries of mere memory. These haunting tales, shared in hushed tones or public recountings, reveal how grief and trauma found expression not only in psychological wounds, but in spectral visions and eerie phenomena. Survivors described apparitions of lost, loved ones, and phantom figures on ships that followed in Titanic's wake, as if the tragedy had left an imprint not only on human hearts, but on the very fabric of reality. One notable account came from Eva Hart, who as a child survived the sinking. She later spoke of seeing shadowy figures near the ocean's edge, figures she believed were souls still bound to the sea, unable to rest. These ethereal visitations offered a strange comfort as much as they stirred despair, a way for the living to maintain a connection with the dead. Psychologically, these paranormal experiences can be understood as manifestations of profound grief and unresolved trauma. The mind, grappling with unspeakable loss, sometimes conjures visions and sensations that help process pain in symbolic forms. These spectral encounters served as a bridge between the living and the departed, a means for survivors to externalize their sorrow and keep memories alive. The cultural context of the early 20th century significantly shaped these narratives. Spiritualism, a movement that believed in communication with the spirits of the dead, was at its height during this period. Many survivors were influenced by this belief system, which provided a framework to interpret their supernatural experiences. Seances, spirit photographs, and mediums became common avenues through which the Titanic's tragedy was mourned and mythologized. This spiritualist lens offered survivors a form of solace and a way to cope with the enormity of their loss. It also influenced public perception, as stories of ghostly encounters captured the imagination of a grieving society seeking meaning in chaos. The intertwining of grief and spiritualism imbued the Titanic's legacy with a mystique that went beyond the physical disaster, embedding it deeply in the cultural and emotional consciousness. Yet, not all survivors embraced these paranormal interpretations. Some viewed them with skepticism or unease, preferring to confront their trauma through memory and testimony rather than supernatural belief. This divergence highlights the complex ways individuals navigate grief, some through rational remembrance, others through spiritual or mystical frameworks. En Dialogue, at a small gathering of Titanic survivors and scholars decades after the sinking, a conversation unfolded between Edith Russell, a first-class passenger who later became an author, and Dr. Henry Caldwell, a psychologist researching trauma. Edith, I once felt a presence aboard a ship years after the disaster, a shadow that seemed to drift through the corridors. I cannot say if it was real or a fragment of my memory. Dr. Caldwell, such experiences are not uncommon among trauma survivors. The mind sometimes blurs the lines between reality and memory, especially when grief is still raw. Edith, but I also felt comfort, as if the spirits were reminding us that those lost were not forgotten. It was both haunting and healing. Dr. Caldwell, this aligns with what we understand about grief's many expressions. The need to connect with what we've lost can manifest in ways that transcend logic, especially when cultural beliefs, like spiritualism, give shape to those feelings. Edith, perhaps these stories, as strange as they seem, are another form of remembrance, a way to keep the Titanic's souls alive in our hearts. Their dialogue reflects the intertwined nature of psychological trauma, cultural context, and the human yearning for connection beyond death, a haunting testament to the enduring impact of the Titanic tragedy. Beyond the chilling tales of ghostly apparitions and personal hauntings connected to the Titanic tragedy lies a deeper, collective phenomenon, the enduring mystique of the ship itself as a spectral presence. More than a mere wreck lying in the depths of the North Atlantic, the Titanic has transcended its physical remains to become an unseen passenger in the cultural and emotional consciousness of generations. This phenomenon reflects how the collective memory of the disaster preserves not only the facts, but imbues the ship with symbolic meaning. As a vessel carrying the souls of those lost, and as a haunting emblem of human vulnerability. Maritime ghost lore has long been steeped in the belief that ships, especially those marked by tragedy, harbor spirits that linger long after the final voyage. The Titanic, with its catastrophic end and the profound loss of life, fits squarely within this tradition. Stories circulated among sailors and divers who explored the wreck of eerie sensations. Voices carried by the ocean currents, inexplicable shadows glimpsed among the rusted remains, and a palpable feeling of sorrow that seemed to emanate from the ship itself. These anecdotal reports reinforce the ship's identity as more than sunken metal, but a spectral entity bound to the ocean floor. This ghost lore is not merely superstition, but a cultural mechanism through which societies process grief and remember collective trauma. The Titanic spirit serves as a vessel for mourning, a way for people to keep alive the memories of the passengers and crew who perished. The ship's haunting presence invites reflection on the fragility of human endeavors and the price of hubris, themes that resonate deeply and universally. Physical memorials and artifacts play a crucial role in sustaining the Titanic's legacy and reinforcing its symbolic spirit. Museums housing recovered relics, such as personal belongings, pieces of a ship's structure, and even fragile letters, offer tangible links to the past, transforming abstract memory into a palpable experience. Memorials around the world, from grand monuments in Belfast and Southampton to modest plaques in small coastal towns, act as focal points for remembrance ceremonies and public reflection. These sites become pilgrimage destinations, where visitors confront the tragedy's human dimension and connect with the invisible presence of the Titanic spirit. The preservation and exhibition of Titanic artifacts also raise complex questions about memory and commodification. While these items serve to honor the lives lost and educate future generations, they also risk commercializing tragedy. Yet for many, these relics provide a crucial bridge across time, sustaining the unseen passenger's presence in the collective psyche and ensuring that the lessons and memories of the disaster endure. En dialogue, in a dimly lit room of a maritime museum, two figures engaged in a thoughtful discussion. Margaret, a curator dedicated to Titanic artifacts, and Thomas, a cultural historian fascinated by maritime legends. Margaret: every artifact we preserve feels like a heartbeat from the past, a fragment of the Titanic's spirit still alive among us. Thomas: indeed, the ship itself has become a symbol, almost a ghostly passenger on every voyage of memory. It carries not just metal and wood, but the stories and souls of those who perished. Margaret: visitors often tell me they sense something, a presence here, as if the ship's spirit lingers in these halls. Thomas: that speaks to the power of maritime ghost lore. These stories help us grapple with loss on a scale that's almost unimaginable. They give form to grief and create a shared space for remembrance. Margaret: and yet, as we display these artifacts, we must tread carefully, balancing respect for the past with the risk of turning tragedy into spectacle. Thomas: a delicate balance, but one that ensures the Titanic does not fade into mere history. It remains an unseen passenger in our lives, urging us to remember, to learn, and to feel. Their conversation encapsulates the profound ways in which the Titanic's spirit endures, through lore, memory, and the tangible remnants preserved across time, continuing to haunt and teach humanity long after the ship's final descent into the ocean depths. As the years progress, the Titanic remains far more than a sunken ship resting silently on the ocean floor. It is a powerful symbol woven into the fabric of global consciousness. The story of the Titanic continues to captivate public imagination, serving as a poignant reminder of human vulnerability and resilience. Its legacy endures not simply through historical record, but through the rich tapestry of cultural representations, films, literature, documentaries, and art that keep the memory alive and relevant for new generations. The Titanic's tale is one of tragedy and hubris, but also of courage and survival. It embodies the fragile balance between human ambition and nature's overwhelming power. This duality resonates deeply because it mirrors universal human experiences. The hope for progress shadowed by the inevitability of failure, the strength found in adversity, and the enduring spirit that refuses to succumb even in the face of catastrophe. Through this lens, the Titanic becomes a mirror reflecting our own vulnerabilities and capacities for endurance. Cinema, in particular, has played a critical role in shaping the Titanic's legacy. The 1997 blockbuster film transformed the disaster into a global narrative, blending historical fact with human drama to create an emotional connection that transcended time and geography. Beyond entertainment, such portrayals have sparked interest in maritime history and inspired countless individuals to explore the real stories behind the myth. Similarly, literature and media continue to expand the discourse, offering new perspectives and keeping the conversation alive about lessons learned and lives lost. Yet, the Titanic's legacy is not confined to memory and storytelling alone. The disaster precipitated significant maritime safety reforms that have saved countless lives since. The tragedy exposed critical flaws in safety regulations, such as insufficient lifeboats and inadequate emergency procedures. In response, international agreements like the SALAS, Safety of Life at Sea, convention were established to enforce stricter standards. These reforms stand as a testament to humanity's ability to learn from its darkest moments, transforming loss into progress. Remembering the Titanic is more than an act of historical preservation. It is a moral imperative. Honoring those who perished means acknowledging the mistakes that led to their fate and committing to vigilance against complacency. Memorials, educational programs, and ongoing research ensure that the tragedy's lessons endure, fostering a culture of safety and respect for the sea. En dialogue, in a quiet library corner, Emma, a maritime safety expert, and James, a film historian, discuss the Titanic's enduring impact while reviewing archival footage and safety protocols. Emma, it's remarkable how the Titanic disaster reshaped maritime safety worldwide. Without those reforms, who knows how many more lives would have been lost? James, absolutely. And yet, it's the stories, the films and books that keep the public engaged. They humanize the tragedy in a way statistics never could. Emma, true. When people see the faces and hear the voices of survivors, it's no longer just history. It's a call to remember and act. James, the 1997 film, for example, brought the story to millions who might never have studied it otherwise. It sparked a renewed interest in preserving the ship's memory and learning from its lessons. Emma, and the safety protocols developed in the aftermath continue to evolve. The disaster was a brutal wake-up call, but it led to international cooperation that prioritizes human life. James, so in a way, the Titanic lives on, not just as a relic of the past, but as a catalyst for change and a symbol of resilience. Emma, exactly. Remembering the Titanic is about more than nostalgia. It's about honoring those who suffered by ensuring their story prompts vigilance, empathy, and progress. Their conversation highlights how the Titanic's legacy transcends time, melding memory, culture, and practical reform into a lasting testament to human vulnerability and the enduring quest for safety and understanding.